Hi, I'm Gan, and today we are doing part 1 of the cardiovascular system. Now, the cardiovascular system consists of the heart, which is what they call in anatomical terms cardio, and a great number of tubular structures known as the blood vessels. And this is what they call vascular. Okay, so now here the cardiovascular system. Okay, we write cardiovascular consists of the heart and blood vessels. Now, the vessels that carries blood away from the heart are known as the arteries. While the vessels that carries blood from various parts of the body back to the heart are known as the veins. Okay, and the heart is actually enclosed in the pericardium, situated in the thoracic cavity in the mediastinum, between the lungs. So, what is mediastinum? Now, let us see. This is the thoracic cavity. Now, inside your thoracic cavity, okay, which is what we say thorax, cavity means hole, okay, cavity means an empty space, okay, thorax, the empty space in the thoracic cavity, you have the lungs, okay, and that will be covered under respiratory systems, and the heart, which is heart, okay, and this is the aorta. Now, in this part 1 lecture, we will be touching on the mediastinum and the pericardium. Now, from a frontal view, we can see that this mediastinum, which origins from the Latin word medius and evolved during the medieval Latin, which they call it mediastinus, and currently in the Middle English word, which we call it mediastinum, is defined as the membranous partition between the lungs. So, in general, it is the region in this. Okay, this is the region. Okay, the mediastinum. Now, the mediastinum, in the frontal view, the mediastinum is divided into the superior mediastinum and the inferior mediastinum. Okay, but when we look in the sagittal view, okay, let's say we cut across here and we look from this region, okay, we can see something like this, right? Now, in the sagittal view, okay, maybe I'll write this is the frontal view, and here is the sagittal view. Okay, now in the sagittal view, we notice that the mediastinum is divided into the superior and inferior. Now, the inferior mediastinum is further divided into the anterior, okay, middle, and posterior. Obviously, okay, obviously, the sternum is here. Okay. And the vertebrae is here. You have 12 thoracic vertebrae, the 12 thoracic vertebrae, okay, is here. Now, the heart is actually located in the middle mediastinum. Okay, and in the superior mediastinum, you can see here is the trachea and esophagus. Okay, the arch of aorta. Okay, and some other large vessels. So here you can see, okay, maybe I'll write it down. Trachea, esophagus, arch of aorta, and other large vessels. And you can see the heart is at the middle mediastinum. Okay, the inferior part. Okay, now here the anterior mediastinum, you have the sternopericardial ligament. Okay, this is the sternopericardial ligament. Okay, it comes from the word sternum, sterno, and the pericardium, the ligament that attach from the sternum to the pericardium of the heart. And at the posterior mediastinum, you can see this arch of aorta will descend, right? So you have the descending aorta and esophagus. So maybe I'll write here, descending aorta and esophagus. Okay. Now, so this is generally the location of the heart. Now, as I already mentioned, the heart is covered by the pericardium. Now, in the pericardium, you have two layers. Okay, so I'm going to write two layers of pericardium. Now, these two layers are the fibrous pericardium and the serous pericardium. And therefore, the pericardium is a fibroserous sheath. And the serous pericardium is further divided into the parietal and viscera. Okay, pericardium. Now, the outer fibrous pericardium is a strong fibrous tissues, okay, which attach below with the central tendon of the diaphragm. Now, if we look at the heart, let's say this is the heart and this is the diaphragm. Now, this outermost layer is the fibrous pericardium. Now, the fibrous pericardium will enclose the heart and attach to the central tendon of the diaphragm. Now, you have two layers of the serous pericardium, which is the serous layer that lines the inner surface of the fibrous pericardium, that is the parietal layer, and the visceral layer, which lines the organ, which is the heart itself. Okay, now in between the parietal and visceral layer, you have a narrow cavity. Okay, inside this narrow cavity, you have the pericardial fluid, and this fluid will minimize the friction. Okay, and the visceral layer of the pericardium is also known as the epicardium. Now, this visceral pericardium is made up of a single sheet of epithelial cells, or known as the mesothelium. Okay, and actually, the serous pericardium is is a thin closed serous sac into the heart, which is invaginated from behind. Therefore, you have something called the pericardial sinus. Now, I'm going to draw, okay, the pericardium. Now, you can see, let's say, here is the heart. Now, I'm going to put a black color. This is the fibrous pericardium. Okay, and maybe I'll represent the serous pericardium by blue. So you have the first layer of the serous pericardium. Now, okay, so it's something like this. This is the something like this. The fibrous pericardium. Okay, and here these are the serous pericardium, and here is the this is the parietal layer, and this is the cavity. Now, inside this cavity, you have the pericardial fluid, which functions to minimize friction, okay, when the heart contract and relax. And here, this is the visceral layer. And not forgotten, this is the heart. Okay, and let's say we can see here below is the diaphragm. Okay, now this fibrous pericardium is attached to the central tendon of the diaphragm. Okay, to central tendon of diaphragm. Okay, so generally this is the overview. Now, in the heart, okay, there you have something called the pericardial sinus. You have the transverse pericardial sinus and the oblique pericardial sinus. Now, the oblique pericardial sinus actually encloses between the limbs of the inverted U. Okay, between the limbs of the inverted U of the venous mesocardium, and lies behind the left atrium between the left and right pulmonary vein. Now, let's say if we bring out the heart, right? You can see here this is the superior vena cava. Now, okay, here is the region. Maybe I represent it with gray. Okay, then you can see this is the aorta. Okay, this is the superior vena cava. Okay, then here you have the pulmonary trunk. Pulmonary trunk, and what about here? These are the pulmonary veins. Okay, uh, the right, and here is the left. Now, if we bring out the heart, we can see something like this. And the transverse pericardium, okay, which is formed as a result of the embryological folding of the heart tube. And this is actually a passage through the pericardial cavity. And this transverse pericardium is actually located posterior to the ascending aorta and pulmonary trunk, okay, which is here, posterior, okay, anterior to the superior vena cava, and is superior to the left atrium. Now, this is the transverse pericardial sinus. Now, the oblique sinus actually is an inverted U shape, okay, that lies behind the left atrium between the left and right pulmonary veins. So now you can see here, this is the oblique sinus. Now, if we do a transverse section across here, okay, what we can see is something, let's say, okay, let me figure out how am I going to get the left atrium. Maybe what I can do is, well, here is the left pulmonary veins, and the right pulmonary veins. Okay, now, okay, here is the left atrium. Okay, and the oblique sinus is here. In front, you have the pulmonary trunk. Okay, and the ascending aorta. here, say the heart is like this. Now, the outer layer is the parietal pericardium. Parietal pericardium. Okay, the outer layer here is the parietal pericardium. Okay, which then not forgotten the right and this is the fibrous, the outermost is the fibrous pericardium, and yeah, this layer here, inner layer is the visceral pericardium. Here is the cavity. Here is the pericardial cavity, and this, okay, is the transverse pericardial sinus. Okay, and this transverse pericardial sinus actually separates the heart arterial outflow, which is the aorta and also the pulmonary trunk, okay, from its venous inflow. That means the venous system, the blood will flow in, right, which is the superior vena cava and the pulmonary vein. And this transverse pericardial sinus is actually important because it is used to identify and subsequently ligate the arteries of the heart during the CABG, or what we call as the cabbage, or what is known as the coronary artery bypass grafting. Okay, so that is the end of the mediastinum and the pericardium. Thank you.